6 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Derek Jones.
Here.
Katie Cornman.
Here.
Stephen Cox here. Lane Jones.
Here. And moving on to the next item, flag salute prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please bow your heads. God, my only prayer tonight is for the Duffy family as they mourn the loss of a fellow board member, Greg Duffy. Be with the family. Greg was an amazing community member and leader, father, grandfather, and I know he will be sorely missed. Bring them peace and comfort during this difficult time. In your son, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, moving on to item 2, public participation. Nothing tonight. All right, let's move on to item 3, part A, presentations, capital improvement plan, and potential bond proposal. Gordon Smith.
I do appreciate everyone's time. Normally, when my wife struggles to sleep at night, she asks me how my day went. And she's usually out within about 2 minutes. I am really excited that you guys showed up for this bond. This is a record for me, so if I get a little jumpy, you'll know why. I do, sincerely, I do appreciate your time. What we wanted to do tonight was kind of give you a quick recap. Where is Piedmont as a community from a bonding perspective? What opportunities do you have? I told you I was going to get excited. We also want to touch on how can we potentially look at something early. I'm sure you're all aware we're still in the middle of a bond program. So we're going to touch a little bit on what gives you the capability to come in midstream, if you will. All of the board members, and I apologize again, I printed out 12 and thought that would be enough. But the first sheet that we'll look at is this one with the blue table on it. This is a copy of your history of your net assessed value. Now, again, the net assessed value is the value of the homes, the businesses, the equipment that all fall within the Piedmont Schools footprint. This is your tax base that drives what you're capable of from a bonding perspective. We all know that Piedmont has been growing over the years, but what we really want to know is what's the pattern of growth? Is it consistent from year to year? Is it up? Is it down? Is it up for a few years and then flat? What changes are happening within your tax base, within the financial value of your school district? You'll notice that you topped $300 million this year in 2023-24. It's a big number. The bigger number probably is that 15% increase. A couple of years ago when COVID hit, we were all a little bit concerned what was going to happen to property values over the coming years. As soon as COVID passed, that next year of valuation that came out was a positive number. It was a good increase, but in my office, we were still a little bit hesitant. Is there going to be some clawback? Is there going to be a flatlining, if you will? From time to time across the state, we will see districts that have a spike in their valuation, and then the very next year, they'll actually go negative. And I call it a correction. I can't explain always why. Oftentimes, we don't get a detailed breakdown from the county assessor, but it's a fairly common factor. And so to see that you were up 12% last year, 15% this year, going back a couple of years at almost 9%, you've got a consistent pattern of growth, and it's consistently high. We've had some years like that in the past, and then things did slow down. But even over this 18-year time period, we've got 1 year that was below 5%. Every other year since then has been above 5%. The last 5 years, you're averaging almost 10%. Now, again, that's averaging, but that's a really, really positive, and the most important thing, it's a consistent growth rate. Anytime you start talking about a bond issue, most people want to know two things. What are the projects and how much will it cost? If we're going to tell them how much will it cost, not just the dollar amount, but really what's going to happen to their taxes over the next 5, 7, 10 years, we want to have a good, reasonable basis for making that forecast, for making that projection. So again, your 5-year average is 10%. If you turn the sheet over and you see the red table, you'll notice we're using 5% as a forecast. We feel like it's a reasonable number, but it is still conservative. Even in those years that weren't that 10%, you're still growing at 7, 8% in a lot of those years. Save for 1 year out of the last 20, you've been above 5% every year. So again, we feel like it's reasonable to project some growth. The value in projecting growth, we can squeeze a little bit more money out of the bond issue at no impact. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. We all know that construction costs have skyrocketed, so we want to get as much money as we possibly can. The next sheet, the larger one, shows you where you currently sit on your existing bond program. Now, I know there's a lot of small numbers on here, but we like to have everything bonding-wise on one spreadsheet so that we can see exactly how we're faring. You'll notice that you've got bonds scheduled through 2030, so you still have 7 years of bonds left to sell. Now, our millage rate here is a fancy way to say your tax rate. When we voted the last bond issue in 2020, if my brain is working right, it was 2020 when we passed the last one. For $35 million, we were in the $38 million range, and we wanted to stay in that range. And we've stayed there consistently. Because of the last 2 years of growth, 12% and 15%, your millage rate has dropped down just a little bit. I think that's in some ways a good thing. What it means is we're planning conservative, and we're keeping that commitment with the patrons. So you've dropped just a little bit on that millage rate, but we want to maintain that. We don't want to let it continue to drop. We don't want millage rate erosion to take place, if you will. So right now, we've still got 7 years left, but our millage rate, if you track along the bottom of the page, you'll see we're about 5 mils low compared to our target, compared to what patrons approved when they passed that last bond election. It's that gap specifically that allows us to come in and pass another bond today. We're basically filling that gap with the proposed bond. Otherwise, we would be accelerating the existing. We can accelerate the existing bond, pay it off early, and we can do all of that without breaching that 38 mil tax rate. Or we can layer in another project in the middle. As we all know, as you guys know far better than I do, there's a tremendous demand on your facilities. You have students moving in, alarming rates. It's a great problem to have. It's far more important, I think the bigger desire, maybe a better way to say it, the bigger desire will be for new facilities instead of accelerating and paying off. Anytime you finance anything, I don't care if it's a bond issue, I don't care if it's a car, a house, anytime you finance, there's always more than one option. And so the last sheet that we'll touch on for just a minute, you've got several different options. All of these are going to maintain right in that 30 mil range, that 38 mil and below. In fact, we're still projecting at 36.5, so a little bit lower than what we were at on the 2020 bond. You'll notice there's a 10-year option. That 10-year option is voting 93. It delivers 61. That's spreading out bonds from 2024 until 2034. Now, I want to pause for just a minute because this is an important part of the conversation. What's happening between 93 and 61? The number one factor, these are series bond issues. So we're going to vote for 93 million and we're going to spread it out over 10 years. So for conversation's sake, we're going to sell 9.3 million every year for the next 10 years. Well, how are we going to build this new facility, this new building, new buses? How are we going to accomplish these projects if we're not getting some of this 90 million until 2026, 27, 28? We don't want to wait. We're not going to wait. The cost of bricks would skyrocket. It doesn't solve our problem at all to piecemeal the building together. So when we use a series bond, we schedule those bonds over 10 years, 11 years, 14 years. But once the bond passes, then we issue a lease financing, a construction financing. We sit down with banks and say, look, our patrons have approved $93 million over a 10-year time period. We have all the authority we need, but we have a timing problem. We can't sell all of these bonds at one time. Will you give us a construction loan today, Mr. Banker, Mrs. Banker? Will you give us the money today? And then every year when we sell a bond, we'll pay you back on that construction loan. The bank looks at it and says 60% of your community is for you. You have all the authority. You have all the money you need authority-wise. You just have a timing problem. I'll give you the money up front. Anytime you do that, there's interest involved. That's that spread. Now, that spread is based on about 5.5%, which is still above where we're selling. The good news, we're hearing more and more and more that rates are going to come down at some point in 2024. A lot of my market commentary that I read is saying as early as second quarter of 2024. But we still want to have a cushion in there. So that's what's driving these proposals and these options. In meeting with the administration with Dr. Eichelberger, it seems like that option 2 is going to best fit the construction needs. Anytime you borrow, as I mentioned earlier, there's always options. But just because a larger option is on the table doesn't always mean that you should take it. Just like going to the buffet, the more you put on your plate, the more you have to process. And so we always want to be responsible in biting off projects, solving the problem that we're looking at, but not going so far into the future that we don't have any capability for the next 25, 30, 40 years type scenario. So option 2, you're looking at a $114 million election. Again, conservatively, it's going to deliver about $71 million. You're staying at that 36.5. I mentioned earlier we voted at 38. We'd like to stay a little bit below that. It's an 11-year option, assuming you only grow at 5%. So there's still a lot of conservative outlook with this proposal, but we feel like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, we feel like this is going to be the best plan to satisfy the projects and the needs that you have without going too far into the future. And again, all of these are based on that 5% forecast. You've been growing at 10, even conservatively at 8. We're saying, what if you only grow at 5? If you only grow at 5 over the next 11 years, can we pay this bond back and keep our taxes flat? And the answer is yes. I've thrown a lot of information at you in a very, very short time period. Any questions that I can back up and talk about? Well, wait a minute. Show me again how we can do this if we've still got 7 years left. Are we accounting for those existing bonds and this proposed bond? What questions come to mind? I know some of you have done this before. This program and platform is not anything new. Piedmont's been doing this as long as I've been working here, going back in I think it was 2007, somewhere in that time frame. 85% of the schools in the state use this same platform, and it's simply because you can't build with one bond issue what it costs to build anymore. So that's the number one driver. I will point out, since I raised the question, I'll go ahead and give you the answer. How can we do this? I know you talked about that we've had growth. I get some of those things. But how can we do this at no increase? You'll see on this bond proposal, on your current bond plan, some of these have different colors to them. Specifically, if you look at the bottom half of the page, there's black and there's blue font. That black and blue shows you in 2020 how we were able to layer in a second bond at no tax impact because of that growth factor. So what we would do with the proposed option, if you chose one of these three or some other option, then we would simply have a green or a red, another number layered in, another color layered in there at no tax impact. So when we say no tax impact on the tax rate, we're talking about your combined existing and any proposed bonds. All of those collectively will stay below the dedicated tax rate. And I think that's an important factor to consider. I feel like I've been feeding you with a fire hose, and I apologize. Questions I can answer on the bond numbers, on the figures. Can we recap again some of that conservative planning? Again, it was 5% forecast. You're growing at 10% right now. On the interest cost, we're projecting about 5.5. Current rates are still a little bit below 5. They're touching that 5%, but we still have a cushion today, and every market indication is that rates are going to go down. I think common sense tells us anytime it's an election year, rates are going to go down as well. So that timing helps us, but we still have a little bit of cushion built into that just on that interest rate factor alone.
By being conservative on our previous bonds, is that what's allowing us
a big
to
factor?
do this?
Yes, sir. Exactly. Yeah. It's a big factor that's allowing us to come in early.
Yeah.
You've had exceptional growth too. I mean,
Yeah.
15% is phenomenal. So it's a combination of those two factors, but absolutely, that conservative outlook in the past has given us the capability to come in early today. Very good question. One of the factors that I liked in our conversations, and I think I mentioned this just privately, this 11-year program, a lot of schools are going longer and longer. I'm not trying to criticize anybody else, but anytime you go longer, you're also committing to more. Sometimes you have to because you simply can't do your project for less than what 15 years will deliver. But I like the conservative planning from a facilities perspective. I think the plans that have been discussed and the proposals that you're looking at from a building perspective, you're satisfying the need and you're doing it the right way, and that's the number one factor. But you're also not going so far into the future simply because you can. You can get, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, you can get a 9-year car loan. Doesn't always mean a 9-year car loan's a good idea just because it's out there. You can buy a Ferrari for $200 a month. Doesn't always mean it's a good idea. My point is, your administrative team, you're planning appropriately by looking at, okay, let's solve the problem, let's fix it right, but just because we can go longer, just because we can get $150 million doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So I'm very comfortable with the time frame.
Let me give you a quick rundown on why I'm recommending the option 2. Option 1 doesn't give us enough money to build 2 new schools. Option 2 does give us enough money to build 2 new schools. Option 3 cost us $11 million for 4 extra million of actual money. That's just too much. You know, there's not enough gain there for $4 million. So I think for me, it's an easy decision to make that recommendation. I make a recommendation, you make a decision.
No, this is good information. I think the questions I get primarily are, and you address those, you know, what about my taxes? What are they going to do? And what are we going to get? And I feel very comfortable kind of putting the cart before the horse, because fortunately, you know, the board previous to, you know, the district has been very, you know, we're fortunate with the growth, and we're also fortunate to have these options where, you know, when these needs come up, you know, and Jordan references, so looking ahead 10 years from now, 12 years from now, we don't know. I mean, we have no idea. The district probably looks a lot different now than we thought it would look 10 years ago as well. But the 2 things I get are, what are we going to get, and what about my taxes? And I feel very fortunate to be able to say our taxes aren't going to change at this point.
And like Jordan said, they were actually voted on in 2020 at 38.5, and we're going to hold them steady at 36.5. So that's a good number. I mean, it's a very conservative number. I really, I'm not a banker. I didn't finish banking school, but I do think that the interest rate's going to go down. As the interest rate goes down each year, that's more of that money that we get to keep. So when we sell our bonds for less and less interest each year over year, you know, we'll sell our first bonds in when we
24. So the tentative plan tonight is that we would go out with an April dated bond election. We'd deliver funds as early as May or June this summer. Now, I know that your construction may not quite be on that track yet, but we do that for tax purposes. So we would deliver the first wave of money, and I'm showing borrowing the money in July of this summer on the lease financing. The reason I'm doing that, I know that's early, but that puts you in the driver's seat. And to an extent, it's the most expensive way to budget things. The last thing I want to do is budget a very efficient way, but now I'm telling the board, well, you got to wait 6 more months because we didn't have that budgeted on the financing. So where the proposals are the most expensive way to do it, as we get to the actual point of financing, then we'll spread that out to make it more cost efficient for you. But we're talking about delivering funds as early as this summer on the interest rate. Now, we'll probably catch that first little wave on the rate decline, but as Dr. Eichelberger mentioned, as it goes along and interest rates drop, that's going to squeeze the penny just a little bit year by year for us. And that, again, to an extent, helps us come in a few years early. There's several different factors of forecasting that go into it, and that's just one of those other factors, the interest rate on future bonds. But we still have some cushion that if 2027 rates pick back up a little bit, we've still got enough cushion built in that we can maintain our tax commitment.
And I want to oversimplify this. I'm going to ask kind of a dumb question. I've been asked by several people just about the effect of this, and I may have spoken a little bit not really out of place, but in trying to figure out the best way to simplify it. We may be fortunate with high interest rates right now, because when they do come down, if we're fortunate to see a 1% decrease, somewhere in this, on $1 million, that's $10,000.
Right.
So if we're in the however many millions of dollars we're into that, that's substantial savings.
It is, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So how does that actually play out? Well, in 2020, we had proposed, and I don't have these notes in front of me, so correct me if my memory is wrong here. In 2020, we planned similar platform, similar outlook. We said, hey, we want a conservative forecast. 2020 was a different time period. When we actually put that bond into motion, it was pre-COVID. But we planned that bond was going to deliver $32 million. And we ended up delivering, I think it was 33.5. It was about $1.5 million extra because interest rates held flat and we were able to deliver more funding and it never increased taxes. So the analogy that I use to really explain the interest rate component when it comes to that construction loan, you have a pie and you have one slice of pie allocated for interest. Tonight, and as we continue to plan this bond, nothing is official, but as we plan this bond, we have a pretty wide slice of pie allocated for interest because we're talking about what rates are going to be 7-8 months from now. So we want to know that if the rate market changes and goes up, we still have cushion. Well, what's happened in the past is that slice of pie, when we actually got to the funding portion, that slice of pie was much thinner, which means the rest of the pie, the rest of the pie, the brick and mortar, we were able to deliver more, but it never impacted taxes. And that's the single biggest factor. So yes, as we get towards that, if we can squeeze that rate a little bit, if we can delay the funding a little bit and not delay the projects, but if we can get construction financing, why borrow $70 million when we're only going to write a check for $700,000 the first month? So as we can implement some of these mechanisms to make the financing more efficient, we will. But I want to know today if the bank won't give us construction draws, if we need to start July 1, if we get 5.5% interest instead of 5%, can we still deliver the construction money that we need if a couple of things move against us? And so that's why we plan it the way we do. But 2020 was a real-time example of that, where we got to the actual financing. We were able to get a little bit more money, and it never cost a patron a single dime more on the tax rate.
Well, and that's good to hear. I think our people, if they're hearing that, their tax rate isn't going to increase.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like, we'll have a good plan for hearing what people want and what we need, wants versus needs. That this should be something, I think our community will get behind, and just hearing, this information is very valuable. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The last thing I would say, we talk about our growth and our growth being positive and growth. We have a lot more kids in school, which requires more teachers and more buildings and all that. The growth that we have because people want to come to Piedmont and Piedmont schools, that's awesome. That's the good problem to have. The growth comes with the tax burden of we've got to build these schools at some point. We have very little options. Like if, let's just say, this bond failed by one vote, the only thing we could do is put portables out there, and nobody wants to do that. So it's one of those deals where we're growing. When we're growing, we have to build. That's just part of the deal.
And I think, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but our elementary classes are still our biggest classes. I mean, the outgoing class, the senior class, is typically the smallest class, and that's been the trend. And to see these elementary schools bursting at the seams and getting those people out to vote, because they don't want their kids portable.
Right.
So many safety factors. So I think we've got a good opportunity in front of us to make a big difference.
This question's more pointed at you, but with the tentative, if we're going to vote in April, do you have like a tentative timeline of what we can share for expectations for the public about when we're going to start having quorums or?
Yep. So we can't start, the board makes the decision, and the board will make the decision. I intend to bring a resolution to you January 16th. So anything up to that point, we're now having public conversations about that. You know, this is live stream, right? So you can have a conversation with anybody about anything. Nothing happens officially until you guys vote for that resolution. When that happens, we set the whole wheel in motion, and now we're set on that April 2nd date. And then we, at the resolution on the 16th, we have to say, these are the things we think that we're going to build, like 2 schools. That's what I'm going to recommend to you. And tomorrow, whenever I have a community meeting with parents from every school in our district, tomorrow at 4:30, they're going to come in, and I'm going to tell them about our needs and, you know, our challenges. And then I'm going to let them work in small groups to tell us they're going to prioritize what it is that they think that we need. That's the plan.
Yeah, so tonight was really just intended to show you what are your capabilities and how is this possible. We wanted to give you a good understanding of, wait a minute, we have 7 years left. How can we do this early? Shouldn't we be waiting until the end? That is a choice that you have. Typically, inflation on bricks is going to go up anywhere from 6 to 10%. And we're talking about 5%, 5.5% borrowing cost. So the ratio from construction inflation versus financing, it's significantly higher as a general rule. So you have the capability today to put something out there. You have several options, and we wanted to make sure that you understood what those options were. There's many more we could draft, but we felt like these gave you a good parameter to work within. What can we do? What timeframes are we talking about from a financing perspective? So again, the plan is to present a final option to the board January 16th for you all to say, these are the projects, this is the bond that we want to put before the patrons. As soon as that's formal and finalized, now your administrative team can go out into the community and say, this is the actual package that you would be voting on. The number one thing when you're communicating in a bond, you have to focus on the projects and the need. Oftentimes you have 30 seconds while you're standing in line at a basketball game. You have a minute or two to capture someone's attention. And you need to make sure that they understand the problem first. I promise you they will ask, what's this going to do to my taxes? Promise you they're going to ask how much the bond is. But if they don't understand, did I tell you, by the way, we're getting X number of new classrooms? Did I explain to you how this is going to free up additional space in our others? If you don't understand the problem, you're not going to vote one way or the other no matter what. So focus on those problems and how this package will solve those problems. They'll ask about the bond. It's $114 million. It's $125 million. It's $93 million. Whatever option you choose to go with on the 16th, here's the dollar amount, no tax impact, and we've planned all of this in a conservative outlook. Other questions I can answer? I feel like I've talked too much.
I have one last question. So in the 2023-2024 column on our current
Yes, ma'am.
plan, we're at 31.79 projected millage for
Yes.
that period. So if we've approved up to 38 or 39, where is that gap? Are they still
That's a
putting
great
that on the
question.
tax?
No, so what happens, a bond issue, you cannot put it on the tax rolls in the same year that you sell the bond. So any year that we sell a bond, regardless of when you're voting, anytime we sell a bond, we are forecasting what we think your tax base will be next year. So that 2023-24, if you track across the page, that was from the July of 22 bond issue. Well, we sold that bond, backing up from July, we actually sold that bond in April or May. We started that process in about March of 22. So in March of 22, we said, we think your tax base in 2023-24, we think it's going to be, and at the time we were probably projecting 280 million. So we picked a number not to exceed that 36 mils based on 280 million. We think that's how much people, if you will, are going to be there to pay the bill. But we always plan conservative. You grew at 15%, so you came in at 300 million to pay the same tab. Another example to kind of explain that, 4 people go to dinner and it's $100. Everybody pays $25. Well, we thought we were going to have 4 people to pay that tab for $100, and we ended up with 6 people there. But we only had $100 in debt, so everybody paid a little bit less.
So I understand that. So are they actually paying less on their tax?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And again, the number one reason is there's always a lag.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter when you do it. It doesn't matter if it's a series bond, a traditional one-time bond. There's always at least a 1-year lag from the day you decide the dollar amount until the day you know the impact. But that's a big factor why we track this every year. Every year I'm going to modify a little bit the dollar amount that we can sell. Now, I still want to do that through a conservative outlook, but that's a big factor why. That same outlook is structured in this proposal as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jordan? Jordan, thank you.
Yep.
We appreciate you
Absolutely.
coming.
Thanks, Jordan.
I appreciate your time. If anything comes up between now and then, obviously we'll be back on the 16th. But if you have any questions, if you're thinking about it, please jot them down. Reach out. Let me know how I can help. Thank you for everyone for staying awake. I know you're all going to run home and tell your families about how exciting it was tonight. So
How much time does the 16th give us to get it to the election board?
deadline is February 1st. So we still have about 2 weeks to get everything finalized. Now, leading into that real quickly too, so we'll have a draft list of projects. We'll have a good understanding. I think Dr. Eichelberger mentioned he'll make a recommendation on which proposal to go with. Obviously, you as the board decide whether you want to take that route or not. But we'll have that document drafted. So the follow through from the 16th to the election board is normally just a day or two. I passed bond resolutions last night and filed them this morning. So it should be plenty of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I think, the plan sounds very solid from a timing standpoint. I think some of this fell into place. We're fortunate that for an interest rate standpoint, that it's an election year. And I know that once we do decide on a resolution, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse by any means. I would hope if there are constituents out there that if they're listening to this meeting, watching whatever, if they have concerns to reach out to us and let us know. I mean, I think I'm biased, with kids in the school. It's a no-brainer for me, but it's not for everybody, and that's fine. But I do think that it's a vital bond issue, and if we don't pass it, it could be devastating to for a number of reasons. When you look at classroom space and the quality of education our kids are going to receive, and I think making sure that the public knows that our priority seems to be classroom space, and I don't think anybody could argue that. So I'm excited to see where this goes, and what we're able to do in February. So appreciate the information.
And I encourage the community to reach out to us. I mean, it was, I got the pleasure of filling in for Mrs. Ferris's class. What was it? A week ago. And it was only a half day. And I got to see what the teachers go through all the time with overcrowding. It was a great day. Loved every minute of it. But I mean, the overcrowding of a classroom is a major concern. And I'd love to talk with anybody about that.
Did you have like 2,000 in that classroom? Is that right?
It seemed like it. It was about 25, but it seemed about it. Learned to have to touch up on my third grade math.
I learned why you weren't an elementary teacher.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for that presentation, for arranging that. Anything else on that before we move on? Not, we'll move on to item 4, to board reports.
You know what, if you guys have any questions, we're in the process, we're going to talk a little bit about board reports. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. Riley, all the principals and all of the directors, administrators send in information every month to Riley, and Riley puts all that information together. It is a phenomenal snapshot of what's going on that month. I'm going to highlight just a few of those, but I want the public to know that this after we do a board meeting, that this comes out and that they can read it. And I would encourage them to read this because there's some really cool stuff, and I'll show you a couple of those. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was the parent university we had a couple of weeks ago. We had about 100 parents and students involved, and we talked about the hazards, implications, and consequences of social media and risky applications and cyberbullying, those kind of things. So that was a good time, and they kept our presenter in the parking lot for. He may still be there. I'm not sure. Just a little tick mark. The current enrollment is 5,344. Another way of saying that's a lot of kids. Our band has some All-Staters, and we have 5 All-Staters, OKMEA All-Staters. Jewel Horn and baritone saxophone, Sadie Carlton, flute, Brooklyn Sprague, flute, Chloe Abner, and trombone, and Avery Weed in trumpet. We had 12 that made the CODA, that's the Central Oklahoma Directors Association honor band, and we had 12 that made that, and 4 that made the Oklahoma Youth Ensemble. So we've got, we just have a lot of talented kids in this district. The middle school wrestling team won the varsity, remember it's middle school, not varsity. The middle school varsity won the title at the Shawnee Dual Tournament of Champions for the first time in Piedmont's history. And I can tell you that I talked to those coaches, and they were fired up. That's awesome. They are pretty passionate about the things that they do. We had some great Veterans Day assemblies in every one of our buildings, and so you can read about that. This last one is pretty cool. So it says, I'm just going to read the whole thing to you. It won't take long. Kim McQueen serves as the dedicated instructor for AP World History in Piedmont High School, boasting an impressive career spanning 48 years in education. Surprisingly, his goal is to reach the 50-year milestone, after which he plans to take it a year at a time. Throughout his extensive career, Mr. McQueen has made a lasting impact on his students. That's cool. Mr. Spears, Piedmont High School principal, shares a unique 1980. Mr. McQueen served as Mr. Spears' sophomore basketball. During lessons of discipline and determination taught by Mr. during that resonate.
Awesome. That's cool.
And I can speak on Mr. McQueen. When I was my last year's high school principal, we hired him before the year started. Tom Ewing, the athletic director at the time, brought him and said, hey, I want to introduce you to Mr. McQueen. He's coming to us. I think it was from OCS. It was a private school. And Mr. McQueen also used to be a Big 12 umpire. And so a lot of HR violations occurred in this meeting, I'm sure, because Tom Ewing said he's a Big 12 umpire, and then he said he probably did Big 8, and then I said, well, do you do the Big 6 too? So when I see Mr. McQueen, I saw him this morning, I hold up 6 fingers, or I was going to 6. So if he's listening, he'll give me a hard time. But he's a great one. He's touched a lot of lives for sure. So I was glad to see him in there. And on the board reports, we appreciate I know I do. I'm not going to speak for them, but I can tell you, having poured a lot of time into numerous of these, I know that you do continuously. It is very valuable. And I've even had this conversation with Dr. Eichelberger about when we see these and we're in an open session, it looks like dead silence and it's kind of an awkward moment, but I typically at least scan through first, and I go back and read stuff, as the days when we do have these in our packets. So I appreciate the time and effort with these, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into it. So thank you very much for everything in there.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah,
think
it's like
that's
being there.
invaluable for the community to get to see it in this format and read what's going on with everything, because sometimes in a board meeting, we hear things, but we have a lot more information in front of us than the public does. So this kind of puts it all on a page for them in a really user-friendly format.
Yeah, the reports are like being there without being there. We know everything that's going on in your building, so I've always been grateful for them, so thank you.
These are awesome. And I thought our parent university was awesome, so it was really interesting and cool to kind of bring the parents and community together that way to help keep our kiddos safe. So that was neat. I hope we do that again. Sure.
But is this the appropriate time? Okay, for the board report? Okay. Okay. So board report time, one of the things we wanted to do is just take a minute as board members just to talk about Mr. Duffy. You know, he's, as everybody's heard, he passed away last Friday. And I'll start it. You know, I didn't know Greg Duffy until he got on the school board. You know, I knew his wife, Jerry, you know, when she worked in the admin building, and I got to know her, obviously through submitting purchase orders, things like that, and had a good relationship with Jerry. And when Greg got on the board, I think there was, you know, I'm making bones about it, I think there was a lot of apprehension, you know, how he was going to be. And my experience with Greg has been nothing but excellent. Greg was he used the word mentor because he just naturally, he didn't do this, he didn't seek it out, but he naturally just, you know, showed me some things leadership wise from you know, he talked about transparency quite a bit. And I know his time with the Department of Wildlife, you know, 30 plus years in directing that. I mean, that's a big job. And you don't become a public servant without having the ability to handle people, to handle stress, and to do it in a professional way. Greg showed that. And I think one of the biggest things, not just on the school board, that I saw from Greg was when he was diagnosed with cancer, they didn't tell a lot of people, and that they kept it private. And we could see, you know, a physical decline, and I never heard a complaint out of him one time, not one time. And that's impressive. And I told Jerry last week, before he passed, that, you know, they don't, he's from a different generation. They don't make him like that anymore. And he's a lot tougher than, you know, I ever could have thought about being. And he fought that, and he still served the school. And he made it to meetings when he could. And I'm appreciative, and I know Piedmont's a better place for that. So we're very grateful to have had Greg on the board.
Absolutely.
I'll go next. So I didn't know Greg prior to putting my name in for the election, but for the short time that I have known him over the past 2 years, I found him to be a man of great character and willing to help whenever he could. He and his wife, Jerry, were some of the first people to reach out to me when I announced my candidacy, just to be a resource for me, and they knew that sometimes this could be challenging, and, you know, wanted to make sure that I knew that I wasn't alone. Since being on the board, I've always admired Greg's ability to stand firm on his belief amongst criticism, even if he was standing alone. He was not afraid, and he stood up for what he knew was right. He also had a keen eye for details that others did not, and I was always eager to see what he caught on our meeting agendas that I may have missed. Greg will be sorely missed. He was a good man. He'll be missed by our community, and my prayers go out to his family.
I'll go next. I didn't know Greg either until I was appointed on the school board. Working with Greg on the school board has been an honor. He embodied unwavering integrity, and his commitment to excellence for our schools was evident in every decision he made. His leadership left a mark on our schools, community, our board, and myself. He will be missed. I'll miss his guidance. I'll miss his opinions, and just his overall leadership for the community.
Growing up with, we're going to school out here in Piedmont. I went to school with Greg's kids. His older daughter is a few years younger than me. Never really knew Greg that much until he got on the board. I knew of him, talked to him a few times in town, but I enjoyed serving with him on the board and grateful for the time we got to spend together.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item 5, the business items. Part A, discuss and take possible action on proposed payment of extra duty stipends as listed on attachment D. Incremental stipends not listed in the negotiated agreement.
We just had a teacher that came forward and said she has this number of hours, 15 or 30 hours in master's degree work, and when they document that, we pay them the stipend, but we have to have your approval. So that's what this is.
For a motion for approval?
I move to approve the payment of the extra duty stipends as listed on attachment D.
I second.
Motion by Katie, second by Derek. We get a vote?
Derek?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Lane?
Yes. Part B, discuss and take possible action regarding adoption of Piedmont Schools' vision, mission, and core belief statements.
So it occurred to me not long ago that it's probably time to look at our vision, mission, our core values. And so we spent some time in the executive team talking about that. But when we put together what we thought was a pretty good draft, then we sent that out to administrators, a number of teachers to get feedback. And they chopped it up pretty good. And it was good that you have to have everybody involved in this. And so we got that back. Then the administrative team took all that information that they received from all that feedback and brought that together and used the pieces that they could to put the final document that you have in front of you. And I think it's concise. The plan for this is to not put it on a shelf. So we want our vision, our mission, and our core beliefs to be out there, not just on our website, but in many of the things that we say and do. We want to continue to bring them up and to make people believe. I'm proud of what we put together and what our teachers and administrators have put together. I love the core values, and I think it's something that we all believe in authentic relationships, and that's with each other and with kids. Servant leadership. I believe in my heart of hearts that we administrators are just servants to the teachers and staff that we work with, and so offering that servant leadership is being part of this document is powerful. Positive collaboration and culture. We've sent some people to PLC, and we're going to send a lot more, because collaboration is how we make an impossible job possible. Safe and inclusive environment for teachers, for kids, for everybody. And then the last one's just integrity, which covers a lot of ground. Transparency, all the things, just having integrity in everything that we do. So with that, this document, if you guys have anything you want to add or change, we will certainly do that. And if not, we're asking your approval, and we'll have it on the website tomorrow.
I think it sounds great. I like it. And you can look at it, especially on the core values. You can look and probably tie every specific action that occurs during a day to a core value.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I was really excited to see this and look at it. We've had a lot of changes recently, and I think this is a great change, kind of set a new vision together and a new mission statement together, and I really liked it. That was great.
Anybody else comments or questions? If not, I make a motion that we adopt the Piedmont Schools vision, mission, and core belief statements.
One second.
Motion by Lane, second by Stephen. How about a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item C, discuss and take possible action regarding proposed revision to policy CFB activity funds.
So Jennifer's not here tonight, but I believe I can explain this to you. So we are trying to make sure that we do everything we can for our coaches and our sponsors when they go out to take kids on, whether it's overnight or whether it's just a basketball, football, band, someplace. They don't necessarily know exactly where it is that they're going to take those kids to eat in Duncan, because they don't know what's there, what's available, what's going to be open when they get done. The way the law works is we have to have a PO to that place in order to pay that place. So we have to have that ahead of time. So they have to do a lot of work trying to get that done, and it's been a challenge for them. And what our fear is, Matt and the other administrators, is that whenever it becomes so burdensome to feed the kids, to do those extra little things, that coaches will just bring them home. They just won't do those things, not because it's just hard. It's just hard for them. So I asked Jennifer to, within the law, come up with ideas, with things, with strategies that we could use. And she came up with two, and she presented them to coaches, the in-season coaches now. And the first one is the one that we have to get approval from you guys. And she can send cash with them. Let's say she sends $500, and that we expect that will cover all the kids' food for that evening. Then they have to bring back the receipt and the rest of that money. So that's got to match up on Monday. And so it's similar to being able to write a check, except you're giving those coaches cash. The other way is a little bit tougher. It has to do with changing the vendor on the PO when they get back. It's really not where we want to be. We want this to be very clean and transparent, and we trust our coaches, but it's going to be Jennifer will get the money, get the thing put back together. So that's what she's asking you to approve. Questions? With our current policy, we don't have the ability to send money with coaches or anybody, teachers.
I'm excited that we're solving little inconvenient problems, so I don't have any questions, but it's good to see.
This is from the school activity fund, not booster club funds, correct?
This is school activity funds. That's correct.
I like it.
Can we not use credit cards?
The problem is, as the law states, if you use a credit card, you have to have the PO to what you charged on that credit card. It can't be to Visa. It has to be to whatever that is. Now, that has been done in the past, but our auditors are saying you can't do that. So this is what we can do. And we ran this whole thing through.
In my
the auditors.
understanding, even on that, some cracking down on that has been because of schools taking advantage of and abusing that prosperity card, P card, or whatever
That's
the purchasing card is.
That's exactly right. Where that's been available in the past for schools, then people just use their credit card for everything and then just pay that at the end of the month. It's like, they just don't put out the PO, and the auditors want a PO to the vendor that you're buying whatever it is from. In this case, food.
My only concern is just word getting out. I'm not worried about our staff stealing money. I worry about others finding out that, hey, this coach has got $1,000 cash on him because we're going to go eat after the game, and now that employee becomes a potential victim.
Well, we're certainly not requiring that they do this. The easiest, the best way is to call your buddy in Duncan and say, what are the restaurants that are open on, Friday night that are open till 11 o'clock? And then you make a PO out to them. That's the best way to do it. What we're trying to do is just find other ways. If they don't do it, we still have options for
No,
that.
I totally understand. I
I get-
business may be open and then they have 3 employees calling sick and they have to close, so now they got to find somewhere else. But like I said, my only concern is that they become a
It's a fair concern.
target.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Not looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the revision.
I'll second it.
Motion by Derek, a second by Katie. Need a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item D, discuss and take possible action regarding agreement with Fuelman OMNIA Partners for fuel fleet cards.
This is just fuel cards that are accepted in a large number of convenience stores across the nation. And we're, again, trying to make it easier for we want, whether it's a field trip or a game, we want our coaches to have an easy way, or our activity sponsors to have an easy way to fill up that vehicle.
How are they doing it now?
We
In their
have
way.
we have gas card. Matt, I'm going to let you. What gas cards do we use now? I don't need. So we're not fueling further away right now. Yeah.
Question? If not, looking for a motion?
I'll move to approve the agreement.
I'll second. Motion by Katie, second by Lane. Can we get a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes. Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item 6, consent agenda. Discuss and vote to approve all consent items. These items may be approved by one board motion unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any or all of these items. You have any questions or concerns on any of these?
I don't have any concerns. I was reading the new wellness plan, so I was interested in that, and that was exciting to see. Is there anybody, will we present that or send that out in any way, or just put it on the website? I think it's interesting. It seems like a lot of good changes, but yeah. I'm just saying it out loud so that it's noted that it's in here. But I liked reading it. It was good.
Anybody? Questions? I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda, items A through L.
Second.
Motion by Lane, Derek with the second. Your vote.
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes, Lane,
Yes. All right. Item 7, executive session. Part A, vote to convene or not to convene into executive session to discuss employment is listed on attachment C, 25 OS 307B1.
I move that we not convene into executive session.
second,
Motion by Katie, second by Stephen. Okay, get a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes, Lane,
Yes. All right, item 9, new business, discussing possible action regarding new business. This business, in accordance with 25 OS Section 311A9, is limited to any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time posting this agenda.
Did we skip
I
action
think
item?
we skipped the action item.
Sorry. My fault. All right, item 8, action item, discuss and take possible action on employment as listed on attachment C. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I got a motion by Stephen. Second by Derek. Can we get a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes, Lane,
Yes. All right, item 9, new business.
Yes, we do have new business, and you've got it in your worksheet. It's just a resignation from Isaac Beaumont. And he is a paraprofessional.
Do we need a action on that? Okay.
Yep.
I'll make a recommendation that we accept the resignation from Isaac Balma.
I'll second it.
Motion by Stephen, second by Katie. Can we get a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes, Lane,
Yes. All right, item 10, superintendent's report.
Thank you. This past week, we lost a friend, colleague, supervisor, father, grandfather, husband, career public servant, and board member, Greg Duffy. I only had the pleasure of knowing Greg for a short time. During that time, I found him to be intelligent, caring, funny, reflective, and an excellent listener. Each time I saw Greg, he greeted me with a smile. He truly cared about students, teachers, and staff of the Piedmont School District. Greg volunteered countless hours to our district. He wanted Piedmont schools to be a great place for students to learn and staff to work. I believe the best way to honor Greg is to carry out his vision of what he wanted our district to be. I'm proud of the work that we've done on the district's vision, mission, and core value statements. Defining those standards is the first step in developing plans for improvement for our school as well as our district. This will not be a document that's relegated to a dusty shelf. We envision this document being prominently displayed in our schools and, even more importantly, evident in what we do. It's an exciting time to be part of Piedmont school staff and community. We're blessed to have a supportive school board, a hardworking staff, and an amazing community. Together, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish. And that's our report.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 11, executive session. A, vote to convene or not to convene into executive session to conduct an ongoing evaluation of the superintendent pursuant to 25 OS 307B1. Make a motion, we convene into executive session.
I'll
Second.
second.
Go ahead, Katie.
I'll second
Katie,
it.
Katie with a second. We get a vote?
Derek, Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes, Lane,
Yes. All right, the time is 7:04. And Good? Okay, let's see, let me get the right part here. The board is returned to open session at 8:51 PM. Executive session compliance announcement. The board entered into executive session at 7:04 PM. Conduct an ongoing evaluation of the superintendent pursuant to 25 OS 307B1. Those present in executive session were Drew Eichelberger, Stephen Cox, Katie Kornman, Lane Jones, and Derek Jones. No action was taken. Item 12, adjournment.
Make a
I
motion.
move to, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and motion by Stephen, second by Katie. Can we get a vote?
Derek,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Stephen, yes, Lane.
Yes. 8:52. We're adjourned.